The market doesn't know what keeps you up at night. It doesn't know when you want to retire, and it doesn't know how old you are. The simple truth is, the market doesn't care. But if you care, you've tuned into the right place. You're listening to Investor Resources, bringing clarity to the confusing world of finance. Here are your hosts of Investor Resources, Don Creech and Perry Sykes.
I'm Don Creech.
And I'm Perry Sykes, and welcome to the Investor Resources Podcast. If you're enjoying these podcasts, we'd sure appreciate it if you go ahead and subscribe, and then feel free to forward these on to your friends and family, relatives, coworkers, anyone who will benefit from seeing these. We'd appreciate that a great deal. Thank you.
So this is titled USA, USA, because USA is first in the world in so many ways. And it seems like any time President-elect Trump walks into a crowd, that is the common chant. Americans understand that we need to remain first, and we remain first in many areas economically and in our stock markets, which we're going to talk about today,
Sure.
because of capitalism and a free society, challenged as it may be at the present time. It is freedom and capitalism that allowed the United States ingenuity, Americans' ingenuity, to dominate so many different areas of economic enterprise. And as far as the stock market is concerned, on prior podcasts, we've mentioned that international investors are investing in the U.S., and that's part of the money that's pushing prices up, even though retail investors, for the most part, remain sidelined. They are so happy to get more than 0% on savings accounts that once they got their 5, and now it's a little lower, they're still happy that they're actually getting paid to save money in the bank. It's been so many years since we've been able to do that. But as
How
it
long
is
has it
now,
been? Yeah.
70% of global private investment funds, despite representing only 27% of the U.S. market, 70% of global funds are flowing into the United States. That explains in large part why U.S. markets are in a bull market. And if you're on social media and people are scaring you about the coming bear market because things have been too good for too long, forget them. Pay attention to
Seriously.
what's actually happening with your account.
How often do we say that? Well, track the data, watch what's going on. And if you're watching, where's the money flowing right now? Well, it's flowing here. And it's not just from Americans, it's from everyone across the globe. We are right now, we're the most productive market on the planet. And people are coming here because this is where capital is treated best. And that's what happens. Money flows where it's treated best right now. That's right here.
I'm going to read a quote from an analyst at the Financial Times, which I'm sure very few of you who are listening to this actually read.
Yeah.
It's not a real cheap subscription anyway. I used to subscribe. I don't anymore, but I get clips out of here. But this is a quote from an analyst, Sharma, and he said, global investors are committing more capital to a single country, that's us, than ever before in modern history. And the dollar, by some measures, trades at a higher value than at any time since the developed world abandoned fixed exchange rates 50 years ago.
How about that?
The U.S. now attracts more than 70% of the flows into a $13 trillion global market for private investments. That's both stocks and bonds. America's share of the global stock market is far greater than its 27% share of the global economy. I mean, the disparity is just fascinating to see what's there in the way we dominate the attractiveness of capital. As you just said, Perry,
Sure.
capital goes where it's treated friendly, treated well. And one of the reasons that we're doing well is because of, as I mentioned in my initial comments, we have a free society allowing for ingenuity. and you get rewarded for it. If you
Yep.
come up with a new idea and can bring it to market and people like it, you can get wealthy. Look at Bill Gates, college student. I don't think Bill finished college. He was going to
Dropped out.
UW.
He
And he
dropped out. Yeah.
dropped out of the U, and he went to work for himself in his dad's garage and started Microsoft. And look where that got him.
Pretty good call. Yeah, it's a pretty good
Yeah,
call,
it's a
and
good call.
that's the kind of opportunity that is provided here. That's why the cash is coming here. That's what can
And,
happen, and it can happen for anybody.
and even if you're not the creator of something, you
Sure,
can still do well. And the issue is with this chart that we have up here is labor productivity growth. We have an environment where labor can get educated, can learn to do more, can learn to do other things, can learn to work better and provide a better resource for their employer. So we get rising wages and we have a rising standard of living that is available to anyone who wants to put forth the effort. That's why the United States of America is someplace that, if given a choice, virtually everyone would rather live here than wherever they happen to be.
it's true,
You
and
know,
people are coming, the money's coming, and those kinds of productivity numbers are not an accident, and they're also not a fluke. It's because we allow more people to find their own way as not as much as we would like. We'd like to see even freer economy and less government regulation in most cases. Um, as long as things are staying safe and as clean as what is reasonable. After that, go ahead and do what you think you need to do. And boy, it really shows. The less the states involved, no matter what state it is, the better for the economy.
that's another reason why the current market is doing as well, is because with the incoming administration, the prospect, I started to say promise. It's not a promise yet. It's
No,
still a prospect of reduced regulation. And that's one of the reasons all these big tech guys are going into Mar-a-Lago to meet with him. My goodness, can we get the government off our back and let us actually do things that we do better than we're doing them now? But we need innovation. And we have the foundation of freedom that allows people with new ideas to create new businesses. And maybe it's not a brand new idea. Maybe it's just you want a new coffee shop and a better diner, and you've got a location where you think it'll work and you can make a better living doing that than what you're doing now. And
there you
this
go.
is the place that it's easiest in the world to get that done and make a change in your own standard of living, your own prospects for your future, to build your own capital and your own net worth, have the independence and freedom. That's here. And that shows up in our stock market as people move from a startup business into something that can actually attract capital to expand. That capital allows the business to get larger, more efficient, more profitable, and finally it can go on a listing on the stock market. And then
That's
real
it.
wealth is developed for that business innovator.
It's true, and like you said earlier, Don, there's no guarantee here. There's no guarantee in the United States that if you do something, it's going to be profitable. But more people are more willing to take the risk because they know there's a higher probability of a positive outcome if you do the work, you do the homework, and then you keep steering in the right direction. There's a pretty good chance you're going to make it. So if you have that opportunity, you're going to be willing to take the risk. You're going to put your own capital at risk, and you're going to make that move, and that's where some of the biggest winners come from. Somebody just willing to say, "Yep, let's take a shot at this," and sure enough, some of that stuff really takes off.
Well, and even when we look at other countries who happen to provide opportunity for innovation and startup, they get listed on the stock exchange there, they can get another listing in the US. And when we look at
Yeah,
the way the market is divided, based on the size of companies, how much wealth is represented in the marketplace themselves, the US by far dominates all the other markets in the world. That's what this left-hand chart is. We
yeah,
run 65% of listed stocks and the value of those stocks in the entire world, we represent 2/3 of capital, invested capital, listed. I should say that listed investment capital, because there's a lot of capital that's invested that's not available in the stock market. Um, but as a country, you would say, why are you that big? Because your
Right.
economy relative to the rest of the world isn't all that big, but it is bigger than everybody else's. I mean, China's next in line, but we're still almost 50% bigger than China is, and they have billions more people than we do.
Right.
But
And
but they don't have a
China's
free economy.
No, they're the prime example of not a free economy. That's why you have far fewer people willing to take a chance on anything in China, because if the government decides your idea is not in their best interest, not that it's not a good idea, it's not a good idea to them, you can get buried in a heartbeat. So they can wipe out, your life's work in half an hour if that's what they want to do. And that's the kind of thing that stifles growth. That's the kind of thing that tells people don't try that in China. Maybe we can find a way to try that in the United States, and they do that
Well, that's if they can get out of the country.
if they can. Yes, I mean that's always a question. Yeah.
So we see the extreme example of government control during COVID, because
Yes.
China took 3 years before they lifted their shutdown policies, and they're suffering from it now.
Still. Yep.
Consumers are quite worried and have an anti-government sentiment more so than they have, well, probably in at least 20 decades. President
Right.
Xi has done a lot to try and loosen the standards of operation in the country. Excuse me, but COVID kind of reversed that. When people started to get a sense of freedom, they began to rebel against the Chinese Communist Party's control of their daily lives, decisions, and their freedom, and the loss of their freedom to travel. And well, be that as it may, when we take a look at this, what's the big deal? The big deal is that all these other countries 100 years ago had an opportunity to do the same thing, to follow in the footsteps that
Sure.
had already setting America apart, and yet they opted not to do so. So if we go back to 1900s, the U.S. as a proportion of the world stock market was only 14.5%, and Germany was almost the same size at 12.6. No longer the case. We're now almost 61% of the world market, and we have Japan at 6. I don't even. Germany's at 2. No longer close to us. They have shrunk. And as
Yep.
of the recording that we're doing here today on the 16th, we Germany is now basically facing a recession, and Europe in its entirety, the entire
Yep.
UK and the EU area, are really struggling just to stay afloat right now. They are having major economic problems. Their stock markets are struggling. That part of that's the reason that money's coming into the United States and keeping the U.S. market marching higher, even though the Dow's gone through several weeks of slipping, and there's some other technical reasons involved there. The forecast that we see for the market going forward remains optimistic and upward. The fact that we've had a 2 year good run in the of a bull market does not mean another good year can't follow. It
Correct.
does mean the probability of repeating the size of those good years is slim. But to have, just because we had 2 good years doesn't mean next year's a lousy year. It may
Right.
not be as profitable, but it
And
doesn't
this
mean it's a
this
bear
chart this
market.
chart illustrates a fairly significant long-term advantage to the United States. That's 125 years and just massive outperformance by the United States over that time period. So year over year, you never know what's coming up. Things affect that, but it shows in the long run whether you're on the right side or the wrong side of business and investing environments. And the United States has stayed for most of the time on the right side.
So if you enjoyed this information, you learned something, you probably have some friends, family, or coworkers that share similar interests as yours. We'd appreciate it if you would pass along the recording. click on the subscribe button down at the bottom. If you want to join our webinars, go to our website. The shortcut is iriradio.com. Thank you for staying with us here today, and pass along the link to share this with others. We appreciate that. Have a great day.